everybody, and thank you so much for joining this live stream. It's the second one of She Can Cloud Native, which is a live stream series I started to invite specifically women in the cloud native space to talk about their expertise, their interests, what they are working on, and any topics basically related to the cloud native space. First of all, I want to thank Commodore and Aqua Security for helping me supporting this live stream to make this happen by providing me the time and support to set this up. And also all the amazing guests who decided to come onto my live stream. Now, if you're watching this, either live or the recording, then and you would like to be on the show and you have something, you want to share something with the community, then please do reach out. I have a contact form on my website where you can reach out. Now, to today's live stream, I have Lian here with me. Hi. Just putting you on, jumping straight in. Yeah. And we want to talk about developer communities, and specifically, I want to obviously have Lian's perspective here on developer communities. Could you, first of all, give an overview of who you are and what you do and why I asked you to come on?
Sure. I don't know if I can answer the last question. I think you have to answer this. But yeah, my name is Lian. I am a developer advocate for Loft Labs. We build developer tooling for Kubernetes. And I specifically chose to work at a company like Loft. For one thing, our projects are open source. We have open source projects and a commercial product. And it's really like a community-focused, community-driven company, in as much that, you know, my job is not just selling stuff, but also, you know, teaching people, educating them, creating some community around, you know, our projects. And yeah, it's all about empowering devs and, you know, people in the space. So yeah, that's who I am right now.
Awesome, thank you. Before we jump into how you ended up in that role and your interest in developer communities, you just mentioned that your projects, whether open source or enterprise, are community-driven. What do you mean when you say community-driven in that sense?
Yeah, we are taking a lot of input from the community. Also, we have people contributing to our projects, which is awesome. Like we have for a couple of weeks now, when you upgrade, like for example, vClusters, one of our projects, you upgrade the CLI, you will see the latest contributors. You know, people from the community who do not work with the company, who have contributed some code to it, just to, you know, like really showcase that it's not just us. Yeah. But it's like this whole group of people who are interested. We have so many people creating content. Like we don't even, our talks never get accepted to KubeCon, but there's a bunch of vCluster and DevSpace KubeCon talks. So
yeah. Yeah, that usually happens, right?
Yeah. Which is fair. I think it's even better if your customers or your fans talk about you than yourself, you know? So that's cool.
Definitely. So how did you end up in that role? What's your background? How did you come about building communities and working as developer advocate and in the cloud native space specifically as well?
Yeah. So I started out as a web developer. I was doing back-end, front-end, full stack, DevOps, like a bit of everything. And about like 5 years ago, I pivoted to cloud native. It was kind of an accident. I was living in Germany at the time, and I always wanted to live somewhere else, like in another country. And I live in Amsterdam now. And it basically just happened that I think I went on Twitter and someone mentioned like, oh, we have this cloud native consultancy. Maybe this is interesting. And at that time, I was already giving talks about machine learning at that time. And I just really wanted to continue doing that. I really loved being part of this. At that time, I was part of the front-end community. I just really liked hanging out with the people. Again, the education aspect and sharing things with other people. I knew that I wanted to continue doing that no matter where I end up. So this consultancy gave me the chance to, you know, do that and give me this entire new space to explore, this entire new like cloud native. I've worked with Docker before. I'd never even like touched Kubernetes before that. So yeah, during that time, I was a consultant for almost 4 years, did a lot of stuff that I would consider developer advocacy right now. So education, evangelism, really going into the trenches and like helping people pull together and, you know, even create like communities within the company itself. And after that time, I felt like, hey, I've kind of been doing this for a while now. I think I'm ready for the big job. So I was looking specifically for open source tooling on Kubernetes, because by then I really love the technology.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to find something.
Amazing. I love how no matter whom you ask in developer advocacy, you will always hear a different story. There's no standard path into developer advocacy, because the role is so diverse that people usually end up in developer advocacy because they found some aspects of it interesting and then they expanded upon that, right? So that's amazing. It's great.
For sure. There's also a lot of people who don't have necessarily a technical background, but who are really good at content creation or just really good at talking to people, understanding people. And I really love that about our role in our community, that there's just so many different diverse backgrounds and there's so much to learn from people.
What would you say is the necessity or the value of developer advocacy in community building? Do you think, if I make the statement, independent of whether I believe it or not, that developer advocates in the space are needed to enhance and build communities around open source projects? Do you think communities would be of the same quality without DevRel, without community, without developer advocates, people who understand to some extent the tech, or understand the tech, and then provide the soft skill and communication upon it? What are your takes on that kind of line of thought, I guess?
Yeah. I don't think any particular role is necessary, or this community wouldn't work without this particular role. I think it's more the other way around. It's more the developer advocates provide a huge value to the companies that they work for.
Yeah.
The communities may or may not exist. I mean, we had communities before developer advocates. Advocates were a thing. There were definitely people, like I said, who had kind of been doing this thing without having the title for a long time. There's people who are just leaders in every group that they're in. They just have this vision. They galvanize people. They are very charismatic. And, some of them are not developer advocates. And I think it's more that, it's not the title. It might be somewhat like a role. I think the other question that I kind of got from this is do we need someone who is knowledgeable with the tech, or who has an insight into the company, maybe to the product team or something? It's definitely helpful, but again, I don't think
it's needed.
I don't think it's necessary,
Okay, that's an interesting take. So you just elaborated on some of the qualities that you would need to that are beneficial if you want to start a community, like being charismatic, I guess being outgoing, having empathy, caring about people, right? You're like empathy, No.
We can go through the list one by one.
What are some other, I guess, what is the step of let's say an engineer has an open source project, right? And what is the step from there to going to having a community, right? There are many open source projects that don't have a community around it, or that have maybe a very passive community, or I wouldn't say that users, if you have a large user base, I wouldn't say necessarily that that's a community from my perspective. I think there's that's my okay, you agree? So going from there to having a community, let's say you have a user base of 1,000 people. What is needed to then translate that into a community? Where would you draw the line, I guess?
Yeah. It's a very good question. It's a question that, I mean, I'm sure there are sociologists out there who have defined what a community is. I don't know. I don't know what the official definition is. To me, it's definitely that a community is an entity that kind of, in some way, belongs together. And that could be that we would just all use the same tool, for example. That's one thing. But also, we share stuff with each other. For example, we share an experience together. We all went to, I don't know, KubeCon together as a group. And now we are a community because we have some kind of relationship with each other now.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be in person, I don't think. It can be remote. But there's some kind of shared experience or shared purpose for us that makes us kind of belong together. I think there's there's a book called Tribal Leadership. It's one of my favorite books. I was actually on a podcast about this recently, so I will share that on.
We can link it in the description afterwards. Yeah.
Awesome. And then what they basically say is that a tribe, which I think is their word for community, is between I want to say like 3 and 100 people or 200 people. So there is an upper limit. You can't really have a tribe can't really be that big because you have to know people a little bit. And while I think like, is the cloud native, the CNCF community, is it one community of like 10,000 people who go to KubeCon now, or like even more? I mean, arguably maybe it is, but for all intents and purposes, it's almost useless to call it a community because you can't do a lot of the community stuff. You know, like the group is so big and diverse, it's difficult to do anything that will speak to everyone. So to me, it's like, let it be like a couple hundred people and we all share kind of like the same purpose or experience.
And so, we're able
the next question was, how do we get there? That is a very good question. So this is going to be maybe a longer run, so brace yourself.
Okay.
I have never actually manufactured a community ever. It just kind of happened. So I'll give you an example of karaoke. That's the thing that I'm currently working on right now. We're doing karaoke for, it's an after conference event thing. And it's just supposed to be, people who want to hang out after the after party and maybe have some fun singing your favorite songs. And at the beginning, it was just me and some friends doing that. And then after after last year, basically, I realized that this is an actual thing. Like people in the cloud native space are really, really excited about karaoke. So I was like, okay, let's make this an actual thing. And at no point did I intend to make this a community or a thing at all. It just kind of happened. People just kind of like started coming in and they were interested in taking part or maybe even helping out. And that's how we kind of created a community. As another example, I was talking to a friend that I've been like working with, also a developer advocate. So we were creating some content, and then we were talking about like, hey, can we make this a community? And at that point, we created like 2 or 3 pieces of content, and I was like, maybe, but let's hold off on it because we are not there yet. Like, it's very difficult to tell people, hey, come join our community if there's nothing there yet. It's easier if people are already coming to you, and then you just create the framework for the community. Like then you create the code of conduct, the rules, the boundaries to say like, this is now inside the community and this is outside the community. So one way to go about getting people to get, to galvanize around you or your purpose. And really, again, I really recommend reading Tribal Leadership because that is pretty much everything I know about, building tribes is from that book. If you establish yourself as someone trustworthy, like really authentic, with integrity, someone that people can trust, whatever you do, people will be interested and will trust you because the community is also built a lot on trust. They will trust you with, the fact that if they are part of your community, that no harm is going to come to them. They will get something out of it. So that's one thing, like build trust with the people who you want to be part of your community. The other thing is like you need to create some value for them. It can be something simple like, hey, let's just have a fun night out, right? If you have an open source project and you just want to start on this community building, I don't know, create some webinars, maybe some workshops, just give people something for free or something that they can actually make use of. And then see, like, does it work? Are people interested in this? If not, maybe you can ask someone, what's going on? I've been trying to do this, but no one's really jumping on the wagon. So you could, get some information from the community or the community that you're hoping to build. Yeah, I think that's the end of my rant for now. Yeah, I think questions are good. If anyone has any questions, then we can dive deeper into individual parts of that. Oh, you muted, Anais.
Yes, I just want to iterate on that. If you have any questions, do post them in the chat and we can pull them up on the screen. I have a question. I remember you posting, because you mentioned Kuberoki. How do you pronounce it?
Yeah,
Kuberoki?
yeah.
I posted it as well in the chat if you want to check it out. There's a Twitter for Kuberoki.
Awesome.
But I wanted to ask you about something, and you don't have to answer or elaborate on it. Just disclaimer. Because I remember you posting a tweet about some frustrating things happening at Kuberoki as well. I don't know, something with like people taking something out of your bag, or what was I don't remember the exact situations. And it's like you doing this amazing thing for the community, putting your additional work that's not part of your paid job into building something and creating an experience for people, right? To come together and having this shared time, I guess. And something like basically creating a story around it, and then people kind of abusing it in that way. And I guess that's an example where also in your developer communities, you can have people abusing the situation that they're in, the situation that you are in. If you are a core maintainer of a project and you maintain it in your free time, on weekends and so on, people can use you maybe as a support person, right? And think your time is freely available to them to use, just as some examples. What are some of the things that I guess you can do to protect yourself when you're building a community? Or at what point do you think should people think about that? Since obviously, like if you think about it right from the beginning, it can create this negative effect of like being less welcoming if you build up barriers or to join a community and other things, right? So I want to get your thoughts on that, like on maybe some of the deterrents that people would prevent them from starting a community, wanting to get into that space.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. So just to share some context, I think I tweeted about 2 instances, basically. One where I was stuck with a bill. It was fine. Like I wasn't going broke for it, but it was like a significant amount of money. And the other thing is that I don't know, but I suspect someone took something out of my bag because it was there at the beginning of the night and it wasn't there at the end of the night. Again, this is not a huge deal. It wasn't like $1,000 or something, but it was a noticeable thing. So I was pretty frustrated about it, but it's not going to stop me from doing stuff for the community because I organized like 14 karaoke events, or between 10 and 15 last year, and it happened once. So it's not, and like maybe it was one person probably, because most people who I do karaoke with are people who I already know. So usually there's like a core group of people. You probably know this at conferences. Like, there's often the same people, and then some spontaneous folks. So it's not going to keep me from doing the things that I like to do, but I might set some rules about like, okay, maybe now I'm asking for tickets, or maybe now I'm asking for I'm doing something different. I don't know. Maybe you have to prepay or something. But what I'm doing for like the official Kuberoki, because now it's an actual thing, and my vision for it is that it could be like a global thing where local communities could just use our IP, not that we have one, but use our logo, use our resources, and then just do their own karaoke thing. Now, if that happens, then it's a bit out of my control. So I need to set some ground rules and like this framework for like what does Kuberoki mean?
Yeah.
What is Kuberoki as opposed to your private karaoke party, for example?
Yeah.
One of the very, very first things that I've done is I think about the code of conduct, because we all want to believe that we are good people, and most of us are. And even like the not so good people also think of themselves as they're good people usually. No one goes, very, very little people go into an event thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna, like tear shit up and just be an ass to everyone. But it happens. Like some people do that for whatever reason, and some people do it unintentionally for some reason. So I think putting up a code of conduct, I don't think it feels less welcoming. I think it feels more welcoming. You just need to see which group you're targeting. If I am a person who's marginalized, and I probably have had experiences in the tech industry that were not great. I mean, I a couple of months ago, there were other things that I spoke on Twitter about me, being sexually harassed. And I've been in this industry for a long time, so it wasn't the first time either. But if I see that an event has a code of conduct, I will feel safer. Because I feel at least this conference or this event cares enough to set some ground rules.
Yeah.
If I'm a guy, or most of the times those are guys, but if I'm a person who never had to fear for their safety, never had to care about how they're being treated, and then I read a code of conduct, and then I feel, oh, this is now targeting me or, restraining me, then I would say, oh yeah, the code of conduct obviously works then. Because if you feel attacked and you feel like this is directed at you, then it is probably directed at you. It probably is. And the code of conduct that we have at Kuroki is not just the regular, like, no harassment, no like crossing of boundaries, no sexism, transphobia, all of that, but also like, don't shame people for their song choices, like don't shame people for the technology choices. Don't talk about someone's, physical attributes. These are things that are not normally in code of conduct if you go to like big events. But for us, we really felt like, because I had this experience myself. I once made a comment about someone's song and they were really, really unhappy about it. Obviously, I apologize, but that was a big learning experience for me. That it's not, for me, it doesn't matter if someone makes fun of my song, but other people, for them, it's like, they're not often making themselves vulnerable that much. And I want people to be able to express the side of themselves. That's the whole point. But you can't do that if you have to be scared that someone's going to make fun that you're singing Britney Spears or something, right? So I do think that to me is the most important thing. Like, code of conduct is always the first thing that I'm thinking about, just to set the tone of the event.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think just to summarize what you've said, there's lots of amazing content in there. So basically, you don't have to set up the entire framework, what you're doing now for karaoke, since it has evolved. You're setting up a framework on how to host those events, but you're at the stage, right, of the growth of the community, of the popularity of the event. So you didn't need that before. I think before it would have just added unnecessary policy and processes. So now before it was just like friends hanging out, right? It was not, arguably might have been a community, but it wasn't like a thing. No one was really responsible. It wasn't like, it wasn't sponsored, like the karaoke party KubeCon is sponsored. So then we also have a responsibility towards the sponsors that nothing bad happens that might damage their brands. So now we have to think like really about scaling up. But as I said before, when you're starting, you can't skip that initial like seed state, or I don't think you can do that and end up with a healthy community. No, you shouldn't.
You need like a core group of people, right, who are passionate about it.
Like the first
if you're
believers.
In the seed stage, exactly. I think like, you can be a bit more loosey-goosey with the rules as long as you trust those people, right? That is the main thing.
Yeah, totally. There's a comment by Emin in the chat that definitely we shouldn't judge people's. You know each other?
Yes, yes, we do.
I was like, maybe you should say hi. I'm sorry. Anyway, you shouldn't judge people's musical taste. Just a side comment. I never share my music with people because it's something so personal to me, of like what I listen to on Spotify. It's just like, that's my moods, right? That's like my personality, how I feel on a day-to-day basis, right? So it's like, for me, if I share my music with somebody, it's like the most personal.
It's like a mixtape. No, I totally get it, because I also like I listen to really wild music, like literally all over the place, and karaoke is a time when I'm glad to share it, but I'm not like, my karaoke playlist is not the playlist that I'm listening to when I work, for example. So, I agree with you. It's very, very personal, and that's why I love karaoke, because people get the chance to share something personal that's not work related, and especially speakers. Obviously, a lot of them like to be on stage, so most of them. So it's a good chance for them to like show this other side of themselves.
Totally amazing. I just love how you can extract the processes that you built, or like the experience you had, onto developer communities. And I guess I want to go back onto more focus onto developer communities.
Sure.
how much would you say that the communities that are built around different projects, for example, in the CNCF, or just in the cloud native space, how much do these communities actually drive the technology? Like a lot of aspects of the technology are driven obviously by the big companies, right?
Sure.
And them investing into different projects, or them sponsoring core maintainers to work full time on a project, right? So they're obviously
Yeah.
having some stake in influencing it. But then
Yeah.
another big stakeholder is the people that are using it, the contributors and so on. How much would you say is that needed, I guess, as well onto driving the technology, bringing it forward? Like, do you think that the space would have
Yeah.
evolved in a similar way without the strong focus that we have within the cloud native space and community? Like, that's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense to go there, because I feel like, for one thing, the whole idea of the CNCF is that the community should define where this cloud native space is going. That's the whole idea. Whether that is working or not is maybe like a longer discussion that I'm not prepared to have right now, basically. But I think, first of all, super important. I do like that. I think if you look back at the history of computing as such, a lot of the great innovations, they didn't come from corporations. They came from volunteers, what we would today call open source maintainers, contributors. Let's also put some university people in there, because they're also not necessarily doing it for financial gain purely, but more for the love of the thing and doing research and just wanting to figure out like what's possible out there. So I think that aspect is just generally, even outside of technology, that's what drives humanity forward. Just if you can get all the aspects of people with all different backgrounds in there, you will always get to a better result than if you just have, the same guys who are from the same university living in the same place. Whether that's working for individual products for the CNCF is a bit hard to say for me from the outside. I mean, if you look at the CNCF landscape, I don't even know how to navigate it anymore. It's just so much. I definitely see like there's some really great communities out there who make big splashes and have these great individual independent in chapters, like Docker, for example. They've been like pretty early in the game, and they have a bunch of local chapters who are more or less independent and doing their own thing, but they have great community, like sub communities. So they did that pretty well in the beginning.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, I guess it's where lots of companies, like their North Star, where they want to go to, right? To have these local chapters, to have self-organized, self-sufficient entities that are kind of branching off of their main project, right?
It's basically franchising. It's basically that, we give you this starter kit, this community starter kit, and then everything else is on you. But first of all, you give us some of your like revenue, or like your user stream is obviously like good for us. But we're not involved in your logistics, right? We just give you the framework for it. And that seems to work fine. And I do think it's a good concept. It's a good idea as such. Sometimes I'm a bit worried about, like extracting value from communities without giving anything back. There's currently a company, which I'm not going to name, but there's been like quite some discussion about, how they're doing marketing. And a lot of people, me included, we just think that they've been positioning themselves as the company that is the company for this particular topic, which is fine. Everyone can do that. But they are doing a lot to extract value out of the community for free, obviously, because it's community work, so that's usually not paid. But at the same time, I feel like besides, like creating like webinars and conferences and all of those things that are obviously like monetary value to them, they don't give anything back to the community, right? I don't see them at CNCF tags or anything like that. They're just it's pure marketing for them, and I'm really concerned about that.
So would you say in that case that the community interest is highly misaligned with the company's interest? Like, even though they might be around the same topic, gathered around the same topic, their interests are not aligned, and because the company is pushing too much of their own interest over the community's benefits, I guess, that's creating this dissonance in
Yeah.
people? Do you think that's good summary?
That's a good way to put it, I think. Yeah, for sure.
We talked a little bit about how you get started with building communities, of starting with an initial kind of plan and then expanding from there. You need to get those first core contributors, core members who have a strong interest and who can take, I guess, long-term more ownership. From a community member perspective, I know that especially when I got started in the space, but also right now when I want to get started with new projects in new communities, it sometimes feels not only daunting, but you feel very like constrained and like, where can I get started without stepping on anybody's feet? You know, these kind of questions come into your mind of like, when you look into a new community of like, how much can I do? Where I can do it? How can I do that? What would you tell those people? What would you tell, I guess, past me who's trying to figure it out in different communities, as well as new people getting started? Because obviously if there's this existing club of sorts, right? Like if you always have the core members who go to Kuberoki, right? And then somebody new wanting to join in might feel quite intimidated. What kind of tools would you give them of understand, like getting started, knowing what or what not to do, right? Besides reading the code of conduct, please.
Yeah, of course. So what I do for example, for Kuberoki, but also I've been trying to create like little like pre-conference events. For example, a lot of times before the conference, you'll have a speaker dinner. Some events don't have it. So last year in Detroit, for example, I organized a dinner and it was just the four of us. We wanted to just like after rejects have a dinner. At the end, we were like 30 people or something. It just kind of like spiraled out of control. So I think, again, this is how community happens, right? You start one thing and then you just, I just like, oh, I'm going to make a registration for like, I think I was saying 10 people because I thought some people were going to bring their friends. And then it just became more and more. And then just like expanded the registration, which was, thank God, fine. And then it was just, the friend of a friend of a friend. And it was just lovely because some people didn't see each other for some time and they didn't know that they would both be there.
Oh, that's nice.
Happy, and it was so nice. It makes my heart really like grow 10 sizes. The other thing is like for Kuberoki, for example, I go to, so this is my personal trick. At a conference, it's the after party. And then like an hour before the after party ends, I go basically to every single group who's there and I ask them, hey, how do you feel about karaoke? I don't ask them, do you want to go? I ask them, how do you feel about it? Just to get like, get the ball rolling, to Inception style, put the thought in their head. Most people will say, oh, maybe if I have more drinks. Okay, I'll come back in an hour and then I gather the people together.
An hour here for drinks.
this like personal like approach where I go to them is really, really useful. It's really helpful because then, then they feel invited because they are personally invited. What I think would be super good if you have like events like KubeCon or like the CNCF is just have these like regular welcoming events. Just for newbies, just for people who have the very first KubeCon, I know that, for example, I was at a conference a couple of years ago. It was Node.js Interactive, and they had a workshop day that was just getting started with contributing to open source or like specifically the Node core. And that was also aimed at first-time contributors. And like if you have these events specifically for these people, I think, that's going to make them feel more welcome. And they will see like, oh, this community actually cares about newcomers and really wants to make them be part of this. So just like focus and direct communication. That's what I would say.
Nice. Definitely. I guess it's also, if you are starting in a completely new tech community, look for communities who have those kind of initiatives to invite newcomers. And I like, as a newbie in a space, I guess that would be a lot more easier.
Another thing, if this was more to people who organize communities, and you were asking me about
the other way around. I want to extrapolate. Go ahead.
So this is interesting because I sometimes get questions like, how do I join this community? Like, how can I be part of this community? And I'm always telling them, you're already there. So you're already a part of the community, right? Maybe you go to the events, or you ask a question, or you just sit in the audience and clap. You're already part of the community. Now, if you want to be an active contributing member of the community,
that's different.
Again, if you ask a question, you're already contributing. You're already, because every question someone asks, 10 other people in the room had the same questions, but they didn't ask. So already, congratulations, you're an active contributing member of the community. Find someone that maybe you message them on Twitter or something, like one person, and then maybe ask them to buddy up with you at an event, or just if you have these like big meetings or something, these project meetings, this governance meetings, like just find one person that you can talk to. If these are people who work on open source, 99% of them are willing to help, whether you've been in there for like years or you're completely new. These are usually, in large numbers, just really helpful people who just want to make the world a better place and who want to help other people. So I know it can be a bit daunting, especially if they're like the big famous people with the big Twitter accounts and everything. But that's how it was for me as well. I still feel this way about people who are, recently someone's mentioned me like, oh, like Taylor Dozal mentioned you. I'm like, how does this person even know who I am? And I still feel this way about like, oh my God, these people actually allow me to be in their space. And it's, I know that everyone's just a person and they're also just people doing their thing, but it still feels the same way to, I think, probably everyone. So feel it, but then don't let it change what you want to do, or don't let it restrict you in what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip. I have to say, from somebody who, like, I grew my social media in the space basically, and I really, it's not like the number of followers might increase over time. Like, I guess it's independent of how many followers you have, but it doesn't mean that you have more people around you. Does that make sense? Right?
Like they're not actual followers.
It's like people who probably see the might see the content, might be interested in what you do, but it's not that active communication increases, I guess, right? Like for me, at least, that was the experience.
It's also interesting, like, do you have, I guess you have your own community that's around your YouTube channel and the content that you create, but then are you also active like in other communities? Like, does Aqua have a community that you're involved with? And then that's really interesting. Like, what's the difference between the two? How do you separate? Do you separate?
Oh, that's a whole different story. And it's something that I talk to so many people, and also like to my manager all the time about, like, where do you draw the line of like, which community is which? When do you do what? Right? Right? Like, how do you mix it up? And my camera is out of focus. But what I want to say is basically that I thought people like Ian Coldwater, is that their last name? I thought, oh my God, they have so many followers on Twitter. There must have so many people around them constantly asking them questions, interacting with them. And I think it's not really that they actively see more and more people just because their number of followers or subscribers is higher. Like, it's not. So when you reach out to them, it's like usually when people reach out to me, I'm like, yay, somebody's reaching out. And it's like this direct communication that is still like, it doesn't necessarily get more active just because there are more people, right? So
I see what you're saying.
So people basically shouldn't feel intimidated by that, because it's like from the person who has, like, I guess it depends on how many people you have following or subscribing to you. So you still, like, the day-to-day communication is like with people like you, with like people who I see in the space and I can reach out to, right? It doesn't mean that that more people will have this bidirectional communication in a way. Last
I will
question.
I will say
Yeah.
the exception is Kelsey Hightower, though, because he seems to be
Probably.
like a superstar in the space, and people are always queuing up to talk to him. So he's like the celebrity here.
Yeah. I guess if you're in that level, then it's completely different. But yeah. Yeah, awesome. So my last question is kind of because I was really curious of asking that, so I want to jump ahead and ask it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So looking at the space, looking at, I guess, the community, or like the communities that you are involved in within the cloud native space, or generally what you see within this industry, is there anything that you would like to see more of, that you would like to see changed and evolve in the next years? Just out of curiosity, maybe also to give people watching the live stream an idea of like what can be done differently, better, or changed.
Yeah. I would really like it if we as the workers, because we are the ones who actually do the stuff and create the value. I don't want to get too deep into like politics or anything like that, but I think this is important to me personally. We as the people who actually do the work, as opposed to venture capitalists who just have the money, we have so much power, and I don't think everyone realizes that, because in your day-to-day work you maybe just think, oh, my boss is telling me I need to do that, and I told him I don't want to, but he told me I still need to do this because business. That is true, that your boss can tell you to do things, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it, right? You could refuse to do it, you could quit your job, it's not possible for everyone. I totally get that. It's something that you can do when you have an amount of privilege, but I would like the people who have that privilege to really see, like, in everything that they do, is there a better alternative for me to do? Is there maybe something that I could do, like a tiny thing, to improve, well, the situation for someone less fortunate than me? Someone who doesn't have that privilege. Because like, if you with the privilege don't speak up, the people who don't have the privilege, obviously they can't do it either. So then we're just all stuck in not doing anything good for the world.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. It's like, why, for example, whenever people ask me about women in tech and related topics, I always highlighted I would like more men to speak up for women in tech, because they are the ones with the privilege to step in, to do something, right? If I, as the only woman within my team, say something about women in tech, it's just like, oh, the girl, or like the woman is again, like, it's her topic kind of thing, right? And it doesn't become a shared responsibility then if my manager speaks up for me, right? Or like other people in the team speak up for me. And at Aqua, I think that's the first team I'm in where that's actually the case, where the other people in the team make sure that it's always very inclusive for me without me ever having to say anything. Nice. And I would really wish that for other people, especially other minority groups, to experience it in a similar way, right? And I think the only way to go there is to have more men, more people of privilege to use that for those purposes.
We definitely need more allies, for sure. But then also, if you are an ally, you need to really realize that this is not about you. Like, your allyship is not about you. It's not to tell other people, how great you are. You need to listen more than you say. That's my number one rule in allyship. Always, if someone who I say that I'm advocating for is telling me, actually, what you're saying is wrong, or the take that you have is actually harmful, I had it to 100 times that I felt super offended for whatever reason. But then this is like a really important skill to learn, is to not react to that feeling immediately, but to really sit down, think about, okay, why am I offended? In 99% of the time, it's because I have some kind of prejudice that I've never thought about, and this person is calling out that prejudice. And that's why I feel, because I feel like this is so enshrined in who I am and what I believe, that it somehow offends me personally. And that is if you are able to kind of get past that, to be uncomfortable with people calling you out, because you can say, you know what, your criticism is valid, I don't agree, but because you don't know me, like, this is actually what you said about me is not true, but doesn't mean that the criticism that you have is invalid, because there are a lot of other people who it might be true for. So these conversations are important to have. I'm just going to give like one quick example, because this is actually very important to me. When last year, as I said, sexually harassed, assaulted actually at an event, and this was like at the venue, so it wasn't like after conference, it was like after the after party, but it was at the venue. And I tweeted about it because it was so shocking to me. Like, it was so aggressive that I just didn't expect that to happen. And a lot of people said things like, oh, I would never do something like that. I cannot understand why anyone would do something like that. And I'm feeling like, how is this helpful in any way? Because you're basically telling me your story is so unbelievable to me. I'm just completely like, this is your privilege saying that because I don't want to believe it. I'm not saying that they're not believing it, but it's basically, I just don't want to believe it. I don't want to engage with it. I refuse to realize that this is the reality that we're actually living in. And that is both privileged and also very hurtful. So instead, I would have liked those people to say, oh my God, this is like something that I've never seen. Like, how can I, how would I be able to help you? If you're in the situation, how would you like me to help you? Can you help me maybe spot this kind of behavior? Because this kind of behavior doesn't just come out of nowhere. It usually is preceded by other very questionable behavior. So instead of just saying these things, thinking that they will make you feel better or make the other person feel better, just ask like, hey, how can I help? So yeah, that.
Totally. Those are some great points. Also, great. Thank you for sharing that. Also, thank you for, I guess, being vulnerable here on the live stream and sharing that as well, and sharing your perspective on that.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. For those people who are watching who would like to see more of what you do, what you talk about, where can they find you, and what is next for you, and where can they see maybe talks of what do you do, and anything related.
Yes, everything about me. So
yes,
you can find me on Twitter at Leanne Makes Things here, and you can find me on Mastodon. I'm on Hachyderm, which is Chris Nova's Mastodon instance. So it's also Leanne Makes Things at hachyderm.io. You can find me on LinkedIn, Leanne Lee. If you are interested to join us for karaoke, you can go to kubaroki.love or to the Twitter account that Annie shared earlier. I will be giving a talk about this specific topic with maybe a bit more like actual actionable items at Open Source Summit in Vancouver, beginning of May. So that is the, I think, Empowerment and Diversity Summit. I'm not quite sure what it's called, but I will put everything up on Twitter and everything. And if you want to go back to all my talks, like from 2015 when I gave my very first talk, you can go to leanmakesthings.dev, and I have all my talk linked there, and you can just binge them all if you want.
Amazing. Thank you so much also for coming on, for sharing your insights and your perspective.
Thank you for having me.
It's great. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching the live stream.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great one. Bye.
Bye-bye.